Welcome back to Important Library Stuff, a podcast where library staff share the inside scoop on all the stuff that happens at Prince William Public Libraries. And trust us, it's a lot of stuff. I'm your host, Emily Bickers, media specialist from the Office of Communications and Marketing, and I will be joined each episode by fellow staff members who know a lot more on each episode's topic than I do, which for this episode covers gaming at the library. So without further ado, let's learn together from the experts. Shannon Ball, who oversees the gaming lounge at Montclair Library, and Heather Miller from Independent Hill Library, who runs 2 ongoing Dungeons & Dragons campaigns for teens virtually. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Can you introduce yourselves by sharing 3 books you love?
All right. I will go first. This is Shannon. One of them would be Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee. It is a historical fiction book, one of those long, sweeping decade sort of books, which is just the kind of historical fiction that I love. Legendborn by Tracy Dion. And as a fun guilty pleasure, the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon.
I read Pachinko. That's so good.
It's been on my list for a while.
Oh my God, it's so good. You have to read it.
So this is Heather, and this was a very hard question. Anytime you ask a librarian and pick out 3 books you love, it's like, oh, but there's so many. So I picked out Lock and Key by Joe Hill, Cucumber Quest by Gigi DG, and The Plague by Albert Camus.
Thank you, guys. I have a lot to add to my TBR pile, so that can just keep growing. So the term gaming encapsulates so much, from board and card games to video games to tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons or D&D. What kind of games do you enjoy most?
Personally, I am a big video game person. I don't play a lot of like board games or tabletop games. I play some, but not like at the level that like a true enthusiast would play them. I play a lot on my PC. It's not a great PC. And I do like some console gaming. I've lost weeks of my life to Stardew Valley, unfortunately.
Oh, it's so good. Farm simulation games are so much fun.
They're so much fun. And then even before that, I was doing Dave the Diver a lot, which is an incredible game. I love that game so much. That one also just had a new update. So
Nowadays, I do engage mostly with tabletop role-play games, whether it be like Pulp Cthulhu or Vazin. Our game master has been kind of exploring into different ones, which he's been doing an awesome job with it. But I used to play a lot more open-world role-playing games, RTS games, and I love several horror game franchises. I was also a PC gamer.
When did your love of gaming start?
I had older sisters who were basically teenagers when I was a kid. And they had a PlayStation, and I'm talking the original PlayStation, the blue transparent, controller with a matching memory card. You know, when consoles had to have memory cards. So we had Crash Bandicoot Warped, which was my favorite game of all time. I still love it to this day. When they remastered those games, I was beside myself with joy. Crash Bandicoot is just like a platformer from back in the day. You guys are probably aware of it. But for our listeners, because I realize I'm getting older.
Hey, they remastered it pretty recently.
They did. But I turned 30 yesterday.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday. Thank you. Now I'm like, oh, Crash Bandicoot's old. This was Naughty Dog before Uncharted and The Last of Us, guys. This is what they did. They did do a newer, I think Toys for Bob or something like that did a new Crash Bandicoot game 2 years ago. That game is insanely hard. Mm-hmm. I say this as someone who thought the games were hard as a kid, but as an adult, obviously hand-eye coordination improved. And I've played all the other ones and 100% of them. I can't play that game.
Wow.
That game is hard.
I'm a huge fan of games that have the story mode.
Yes.
I'm basically invincible. And here for the vibes.
Yeah.
That's how I'm playing Spider-Man 2. Nice. Friendly neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. See, that's the whole, this is the first time I tried playing Bloodborne. And I was like, where's the story? Oh, there is no story mode. I see, that's the point. Okay. For my love of gaming. Similarly, my siblings and I used to make up characters and plots, and under the guise of these, we used to wander around the woods, hit each other with sticks, and make bows and arrows out of twine and tree branches.
So, LARPing.
Yeah. And it's funny, because as an adult, I've only ever LARPed for a class, which I know sounds probably absurd, but it was for an anthropology project. So as an adult, I've never actually done that particular genre of gaming. But as a kid, we were doing it all the time. And I didn't even know it was called LARPing. It was just what we did. It translated later into like, cool, we're going to actually get into sword fighting. And then it translated into TTRPGs. So good times.
Heather, for those who do not know, what exactly is Dungeons & Dragons and how is it played?
So Dungeons & Dragons is a tabletop roleplay game that started around the 70s. At its core, it is collective storytelling that gets directed and nudged by the roll of a dice. It typically takes place in a fantasy setting. There are lots of books and tutorials that can help direct you in building characters, plot, or the world, and can help you understand the rules. But at its core, the Dungeon Master creates a plot, the players create characters, and the characters get to solve the Dungeon Master's plot, whether it be a mystery or a war story or whatever. Everyone in the group, DM included, rolls dice to see how spectacularly their characters fail or succeed.
So it basically comes down to luck with the dice, but you do get to choose what you do.
Yeah. So if you're a DM, you're playing what's considered non-playable characters, NPCs. If you're a player, it's your player character. You choose the actions of your characters. You get to voice them to whatever extent you have agreed upon with your DM. And the dice pretty much decide if you succeed or not. It depends on your DM. I know I'm a very heavy role-playing DM, so if you can convince me with role-playing that you succeeded, I'll probably let you do it. There's definitely also the rule of cool is a very common thing you'll hear within Dungeons & Dragons groups, where if you come up with something that's just too awesome to fail, you're like, all right, yeah, you got that.
I love that. When you're not the Dungeon Master, what character or characters do you like to play as? Any specific alignment or quirks?
Okay, so I like to attempt to subvert expectations.
So paladins maintain their abilities if they keep to the tenets of their god or creed. Kirka, my 15-year-old tiefling paladin, worships a trickster god, so she has to play pranks as a form of worship, or else she'll lose her powers.
I also have a dark, suave baron whose bloodthirsty family has made their wealth acquiring winery lands with questionable means. Despite his dark past and darker intentions, Arkady is very squeamish at the sight of blood. Whoa. And panics over having any of his stylish wardrobe marred by even the slightest dash of mud. I also like making homages to book characters. So Nobody Owens or Bod is a tribute character to Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book. She's known to randomly start talking to a skeletal hand that she keeps stuffed away in her robes because it raised her as a child.
Yeah, and you can't turn your back on family.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. No, you just carry it with you at all times, unless it's on your back literally, in which case you've turned it on accident.
Right, that's true. Yeah. Can you tell me about the campaigns at the library that you DM?
Yeah, so currently one of my teen campaigns is doing a Halloween special, which I know sounds like that is completely off to the side, but we were finishing up a different campaign. They requested a Halloween special, and so during Christmas, I was like, do you guys want to do the Halloween special? And they were like, yes. Yes, we do. And it involves a pumpkin that goes around stealing hands, not lethally. You can get them back. And it can use whatever powers from the person whose hands it's stolen from. So if it can take your hands, it's now gained the abilities of your player character. So that's been a very fun one. My other campaign group is doing the backstory for one of our players. He doesn't know too much yet, so I can't give too much away. But there is a person from his past that is called out for help, and they ended up in this crazy Fey realm with talking mushrooms and a master moth that flies over and will just start chatting with them in rhyme and riddles, and is not useful whatsoever. But I think they're having a fun time with it.
That sounds awesome. 2024 marks the 50th anniversary of D&D. Like you said, it's been around a while. And we're celebrating by hosting a lot of D&D campaigns, both virtual and in person, for teens and also for adults. They all require pre-registration at pwcva.gov/library. Do you have any tips for first-time D&D players?
So this definitely depends on the player, but I'm going to break down the two things that I have noticed that intimidate people the most. One of them is the rules, and I'll admit that I relate very much to this because the first time someone handed me the rule book, I was like, lol, I'm not reading this 250-page guide. What are you talking about? So I would recommend get in touch with your DM and make sure they know the thing that you feel less confident in. It's okay to start and not have a firm grasp on the rules. It's better to enjoy the game and get into it. Almost always there's going to be someone who's willing to put out a helping hand and say, hey, this is how you do this, and walk you through the process. On the other side of it, if you are a heavy rules person, I often find people have a hard time with the role play element. So they'll get very intimidated about being brought to a table and having to act out of their normal character in this, person they've created. For those people, it's also good to talk to your DM just to let them know, hey, instead of having me actually play act the scene, can I summarize what my character does? There's nothing wrong with saying, I go over to the merchant and I try to convince him to sell me that fish in exchange for my shoe. As opposed to actually saying, excuse me, sir.
Yeah, you don't need the accent. You don't need to do the
accent. Yeah, specifically the accent never.
But it helps.
Oh, yeah. No, you can charm your way through anything with that.
To that point, I think most DMs put their email on the page where you register.
Yes.
So people can find them that way and email them directly.
Yeah, definitely let us know in advance. And something and this is something I recommend for DMs to do, I try to put out a list of, they're called lines and veils. It's a list of basically trigger warnings or content warning things that I like to establish with my players ahead of time to see what they're comfortable with and not comfortable with. This is a library program. You're not going to see a massive massacre happening. But at the same time, just in case someone has a particular thing that, like I've had someone who's been very afraid of bugs before, a lot of monsters in Dungeons & Dragons are bug related. So it's very good in advance to make sure I prefer it from the DM side. That way it takes it off of the player's back. It's better to make sure everyone's safe and having fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything participants need to prepare in advance?
Be prepared to have fun. It does depend on the campaign. I try to make sure that I can do some kind of character building with them ahead of time. Character building can be very intimidating for first-time players. I do recommend get at least a rough vibe of what you want. If you're not used to playing, it's not bad to say, hey, Legolas was cool. What would that be in Dungeons & Dragons? And then your DM can kind of work you through it. But yeah, I would definitely say get at least somewhat acquainted with the source material in the sense of have a rough idea of what kind of characters are out there. But again, there's nothing wrong with coming in and saying, I'd like to be Katniss Evergreen. I don't know why I'm stuck on archers. I'm so sorry, but
because they're cool
they're
and
awesome.
They usually remain safe.
Yeah, that's
true. From harm. So,
as a DM, that is not always true. I consider that a challenge.
Okay, remind me to not, sign up for one of your.
I try not to kill my players. As for being prepped in advance, come in with an open mind, come in to have fun. Something I would recommend is for first-time players, do not play an evil alignment. No one's going to have fun because you're going to come in, you're going to backstab all of your friends, and then they're not going to trust you the next time you play together.
So let's say someone already has D&D experience. Should they still sign up, or is this really only for newbies?
Oh, absolutely. I have the one I'm doing now, I have 2 different DMs that are in my group and 2 people who have never played before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it was actually fantastic because in one of my sessions, they had approached me and they were like, cool, I want to be a wizard. I'm like, that is the hardest class for a new player to play. They're like, I don't care, I want to be a wizard. I'm like, all right, we're making you a wizard. And we went through the character design process together and they were very patient. They were really good about reading up on everything. And they've done great, even though usually new players tend to go for like fighter's a pretty easy class for a new player. Barbarian's a pretty easy class for, I hit things, that kind of, yeah. But I've had stuff on the exact opposite side too, where one of my other players gave me this phenomenal backstory, and I stopped and I was like, "You have been playing a really long time." They're like, "Yeah, I'm a DM." It's like, okay, that makes more sense, and it's kind of nice having the balance because then my teens often help each other out.
So, what are some of the more memorable D&D experiences you've had?
Okay, I'm gonna stick with the library ones because that's just too broad. I'm going for like overall. With the library ones, I think some of my favorite experiences were we had a character in my very first session who, in her backstory, did not understand how doors worked because she came from a civilization that lived in the trees. And so the first thing she does, she is a diplomat coming in from a foreign country, and she kicks down the door right off the bat. And all of the other characters who are behind her, who are from this continent, just look at her like, what are you doing? And it was the best introduction. The other thing that I think has always been fun is in my sessions, I will go out of my way to make sure that my players get to decide how their final move goes. We had one guy that was fighting, so quippers are like piranhas, think of it like that. He was fighting a whole group of them, and as his finishing move, because they had been biting him the whole time, he bit off all of their heads. It was very brutal and very funny.
Very much an eye for an eye.
He was like a dwarf fighter. This was like way up his alley.
All right, so switching to video games. Shannon, I want to know more about the gaming lounge at Montclair. Can you describe the space for those who haven't visited it?
Right. Well, the gaming lounge is a room completely dedicated to gaming. It's right next to our young adult area. It is its own separate room with a door and everything. Two of its walls are like floor to ceiling windows. And despite what people may think, it is not soundproof. Because people just get excited. We have a lot of really exciting games. We also have different gaming lights that like change colors. We have gaming chairs, which are always a big crowd pleaser.
What kind of consoles and games does it have?
Well, right now, the gaming lounge is home to a PlayStation 4 and a Nintendo Switch. But patrons can expect some changes in the near future. I can't give anything away right now, but I promise they're good changes.
All right.
In terms of games, we have 27 different games in the gaming lounge, so I won't list all of them. But we do have some like Nintendo classics like Mario Kart, and we have Super Smash Brothers. Some popular ones that are on the PlayStation are like Gang Beasts, Uncharted 4, and Spider-Man.
What are the hours?
So the gaming lounge has a lot of the same hours as like the group study rooms. They can be booked up to 2 weeks in advance, twice a week for up to 2 hours. And those hours, Monday through Wednesday, are just 10 to 7:30. And then Thursday through Saturday, 10 to 4:30.
Are there any age limits for who can use it?
The room is open to the general public. There's no real age limit, but a library card holder must be 13 years or older to reserve the room, and it is by reservation. Patrons younger than 13 have to be accompanied by an adult. The max capacity for the room is 4. We have 5 chairs in there, so 5 people could fit, but it's a tight space. And it is assumed that anyone using the game lounge has some prior experience either with the consoles or gaming. As much as staff would love to stay and play, unfortunately, we can't stay and demonstrate or play any games with patrons.
What have been some of your favorite programs hosted in it?
Well, we have done quite a few gaming tournaments for like teens and tweens for the most part. They've all been really fun. We get a good turnout for them. We do have a new one for adults coming up called Movement Mondays. So the idea spawned as a different way for patrons with those New Year's resolutions to get active, to do it in a way that wasn't a traditional exercise class. Movement Mondays will focus on motion-centered gaming as a form of low-impact exercise with games like Nintendo Switch Sports. And most importantly, by gaming, we're also going to be exercising our brains. Studies have shown that gaming can help improve vision, cognitive flexibility, and executive functioning over time. I'm going to get really technical for a second because I had to do this whole presentation to like prove to my coworkers that my job's not silly.
Oh, please do. We're excited to hear the technicalities.
All right. So, for example, focus on objects across time or multiple object tracking is the ability to focus on an object across time. So many of the sports in Nintendo Switch, such as tennis, volleyball, and badminton, require a user to focus on both the movements of the ball and the player. I could talk about gaming as a learning tool all day, but needless to say, I'm very excited about this new program. Movement Mondays will start on Monday, January 22nd at 1:30 and be held on the fourth Monday of every month through the end of April.
Awesome. That sounds great. Do you have any fun memories from patrons using the gaming lounge?
I will say there's nothing really specific. We do get like different generations of gamers that come in, which is really great. Like it's always fun to see grandparents playing with their grandkids or like parents playing with their kids. It's really great to just be like a place where families can hang out together.
So I know you said you don't get to play a whole lot with your coworkers, which makes sense. Do you have any fun memories from you or other library staff using the gaming lounge?
I have made my coworkers play with the Switch. I forced them into some team building.
Good.
So we all played Nintendo Switch Sports. We played tennis. I will say that some people are a little competitive. And they may have been playing more like it was real tennis than it actually is. They know who they are.
We'll leave it there. Yeah. Okay, let's say Nintendo is letting you design a custom cart that will be included in Mario Kart 9 if it ever comes out. Would you put a library book cart in the game, or would you add something else entirely? We've seen some hilarious names online like Dolly Carton, Voldemort, Cart Vader. What would you name yours?
I want to be so creative, but I am not. Like, I started asking people for ideas for this. I got Katniss Everdeen. I don't know about using a book cart. Like, for some reason, when you say that, all I can imagine is just like Toad on top of a book cart, throwing books at people.
Wouldn't that be amazing instead of shells?
It would. It really depends. If you're using one of those newer book carts with like the really crazy like industrial wheels, you have a chance.
And you can use magazines as bananas because they're very slippery.
That's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
See, I think you could totally do a book cart in the game and have it so you're throwing books at people. And how great would it be if the different genres like did different things? Like, you know how you have different colored, like, yeah. Just have it so different genres can, like, maybe it just has a boo pop out if it's a horror book. And
Oh my God.
If anyone's listening and is a game dev, because there are racing games for everything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed.
There
like,
truly is.
Everything has become a racing game. I played a Sonic racing game, and it was like, he's already so fast. Why does he need a car? But
he just is the car.
he just,
They had to nerf him a little bit just so other people could play.
yeah, it's like no one else has got a chance. That boy has speed. So we've talked about video games and D&D. Let's talk about board games and puzzles too. How can lovers of those games have fun at the library?
Puzzle stations. Potomac, Central. Every once in a while, Montclair will have one. We don't do one every month, but we'll do it as sort of a program every once in a while. Right now, we do have one. It is Winter Cats. They're just a bunch of cats wearing scarves. It's a great puzzle.
It's cute.
I just feel cozier hearing about it. So
It's a winter-themed puzzle. I'm on brand.
yeah, so people should just check the online events calendar too and search game or puzzle, and you'll come up with a lot of stuff.
There is a gaming tag.
For kids, what games or toys can they find at the library?
Well, all of our branches have kids' puzzles, and there are some that stay at the branch, but there are actually lots that can be checked out and taken home. And I know that each branch has its own set of toys that they'll rotate around and just have available for playtime.
And I know quite a few of them do the Lego programs, which are really cool. They have Lego nights. And I know that there's a few different ones, at least for a while there, that we're doing like Pokemon nights, which was pretty cool. I know with our library, we got tons and tons of stuffed animals. And of course, I have to plug and say that there are awesome mascots at least half of the libraries now that you got to come in and say hi to.
Yes.
Lots of them love hugs.
I think there's chess nights too.
Oh, yeah.
So I love our library cart game that we designed. If you could design a library-themed game of any format, what would it be?
Okay, so I've actually thought about this before. I used to work for a game design company. I was a creative director for one. So this is like a thing that my brain goes into a lot. I would love to do some kind of like mystery solving game that is involved with the library. It would be great for augmented reality, but it could be done in a few different ways. But something that requires you to go through and actually find pages in books and use those as the clues. So you'd have to decode something to figure out what book you're looking for. You could do this a million different ways, whether you want it to be something related to the Dewey Decimal System, whether you want it to be related to find this type of author and narrow it down from that way. But I think you could do a very fun mystery solving game.
Yeah,
that
lots of
is-
puzzle solving.
Yeah. You could do something
so like
really
an
cool with that.
in-person one.
Yeah, you could do something in person that would require you to hop from different library branch to different library branch to collect the different puzzle pieces to come to the end goal.
Oh, that's so cool.
I keep thinking about this game that I see ads for all the time. It has no release date. It has no beta, nothing. It's called Tiny Bookshop. You basically have like, it's like a tiny house, but like a mobile one. And you just like could go around like this seaside town with a bookstore that you can like customize what you have in the store. You can redecorate. You get to know like the locals and like can cater towards their tastes and stuff. You could do the same thing with a mobile library. Just saying. And you could have like a little seating area. You could learn, you could have like, cooking mini games to like learn how to make snacks and things like that. I think that would be fun. And I'm still waiting for Tiny Bookshop to have a release date. Please, devs, let me know sometime soon.
Yeah, we need to make all 3 of these.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's happening. What's your favorite book that involves games or gaming?
In reference to the title of this episode, Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin is really great. I just think that it does a really great job of showing how gaming isn't necessarily like, it's not like the stereotype that people think it is. It helps a lot of people build community and found family in ways that they might not otherwise without gaming to keep them together.
Absolutely.
My first fantasy book ever was Dragonlance. And Dragonlance is literally a Dungeons & Dragons campaign that just got converted into being a book series. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely loved it as a child. That was a really fun one. I remember when I was growing up, I read a book called Heir Apparent that was really cool because this is like back when virtual reality was not a thing that we all were familiar with, and the Oculus hadn't come out and we hadn't had like PT scaring everyone and all of that jazz. There was a theoretical virtual reality game called Heir Apparent about someone who was going in to be a tester for the system. And of course, the system breaks down and she gets trapped in the game. And that's pretty common as a trope now. And you see it in several different, shows and movies and TV series. It was the first time I'd seen it. And I want to say that the book came out in 2002. So more recent than I thought, but it was pretty early for that type of system. And I remember really liking it. I don't know how much I would like it now. I remember it being really fun back in the day.
Do you guys have any parting thoughts or tips for our gaming community or people who might be interested in trying it through the library resources?
Don't be afraid of coming out to experiment with it. I think one of the biggest things is I get worried that people get kind of intimidated. Like before I was discussing how people can be afraid of like, oh man, I have to be able to role play for this, or oh man, I have to know 1,000,001 rules. You do if you're a wizard. But if you're not playing a wizard, you'll be fine. But yeah, so I think don't be intimidated at the prospect of coming in, getting to learn something and having some fun. And worst case scenario, if you don't like it, you can try something else, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you've never used a console before doesn't mean you can't. Lots of games have the in-game tutorial for you, and they'll show you how to play. And most gaming is just practice.
Before we go, I wanted to plug our online events calendar again so folks can see all the gaming and non-gaming related programs on the horizon like D&D, Lego Club, Board Game Fun, escape rooms, chess, even more. Visit pwcva.gov/library, check on library events, and you'll find the online calendar where you can register or learn more. Thank you both so much for answering all my questions.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
If our listeners have questions, we'd love to answer them on a future Ask a Librarian episode. Just record your question as an audio file mentioning your first name and home branch, and email it to libcommunications@pwcgov.org. That's libcommunications@pwcgov.org. I will close us out with a quote from the book referenced in the episode title, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. It isn't a sadness, but a joy that we don't do the same things for the length of our lives. Thanks for listening, and join us in 2 weeks for the next episode of Important Library Stuff.